Right then, the story of Joy Division's end and New Order's beginning is not just about a change of name. It is about how a whole country learned to dance through its pain. In May 18, 1980, Macclesfield, England, a 23-year-old man sits in his kitchen. He watches a film by Werner Herzog. He listens to a record by Iggy Pop, and then he hangs himself. His name was Ian Curtis. We talked about him in our first episode. In that single quiet moment, Joy Division, the darkest, most intense band in Britain, was completely dead. The band members had a straight rule: if anyone leaves, the band is finished. No exceptions. But here is the real mystery of the story. How did the ashes of a band famous for pure depression give birth to the most colourful electric dance music of the 1980s? How does the sound of absolute grief transform into a nightclub anthem? Think about it. Going from the cold, grey sound of Joy Division to the bright, synthetic beat of New Order is not just a change in musical style. It is a change in survival strategy. To understand how they did it, and why post-punk had to die for this to happen, we have to look out the window at the streets of Britain. Let's set the scene. It's the early 1980s. Margaret Thatcher is the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. The country is going through a massive, painful change. The old industrial world is falling apart. By 1981, unemployment numbers hit 2.5 million. Entire communities in the north of England, especially in the working class city like Manchester, were dying. Imagine walking through Manchester back then. You would see empty red brick factories, broken glass and red-grey streets. The sky always felt heavy. This was the world that created post-punk. Post-punk was exactly what it sounded like, the sound of the broken machine. It was raw, cold and angry. It stripped rock music down to its bare bones. But here is the thing about post-punk. It was a perfect mirror for the reality of 1979 and 1980, but a mirror cannot keep you warm. You can only stare into the dark for so long before it is your life. The youth of Britain were exhausted. The rise in cities like Brixton and Torstow in 1981 showed a country at its breaking point. People did not want to stand in freezing concert halls listening to angry young men scream about how terrible life was anymore. They already knew life was terrible. They lived it every single day. They needed an exit. They needed a place to sweat, to forget, and to move. Post-punk, as a cultural movement, had painted itself into a corner. It had become too heavy, too serious, and too miserable. It was a dead end. The youth needed a new drug to survive the 1980s, and that drug was the dance floor. Back in Manchester, the surviving members of Joy Division, Bernard Sumner, Peter Hook, and Stephen Morris, were completely lost. They had lost their singer, their best friend, and their voice. They kept their promise. They dropped the name Joy Division. They added Gillian Gilbert on keyboards and called themselves New Order. At first, they did not know what they were doing. Their first album, Movement, released in 1981, was heavy and slow. It still carried the ghost of Ian Curtis. You could hear three young men who were trapped in the past, afraid to move forward. But then came to the turning point, a tour to New York City in 1981. Imagine these pale boys from the rainy streets of northern England walking into the underground clubs of New York. Places like Danceteria or Hurrah. They did not hear traditional rock bands. They heard early hip-hop. They heard Italian disco music. They heard DJs mixing electronic beats that hit you just like a hammer. They looked around and saw crowds of people dancing until the sun came up, escaping their hard lives through pure rhythm. It was a wake-up call. They realized something crucial. Synthesizers and computers were not just cold, soulless machines, they were tools to build a new world. When they returned to England, they started buying electronic equipment, drum machines, sequencers, synthesizers that they barely knew how to use. Post-punk was about destroying traditional rock music using rock instruments. But New Order decided to throw away the instruments entirely. They started fighting with technology, forcing machines to have a human heartbeat. Joy Division was built on Peter Hook's bass guitar leading the melody, and drums that sounded like military marches. New Order flipped the script entirely. They let the machines control the time. They built massive walls of bright, synthetic sound. But, and this is the true genius of New Order, they never lost their sadness. They didn't suddenly become a happy pop band. They brought the grey rain of Manchester into the bright neon lights of New York. Take a song like Blue Monday, released in 1983. It became the best-selling 12-inch single of all time. The beat is pure energy. It forces your body to move. The drum machine, a Roland TR-808, kicks like a weapon. But listen closely to the words. Listen to Bernard Sumner's flat, emotionless voice. How does it feel to treat me like you do? It is a cold song. It is a song about betrayal, loss, and deep confusion, hiding inside a perfect pop beat. They didn't stop being sad, they just learned how to cry on the dance floor. This was a bridge from the death of post-punk to the birth of dance rock. New Order proved that electronic music didn't have to be stupid or shallow. It could hold deep human trauma. They took the money they made and helped fund the Hacienda, the famous nightclub in Manchester. That club became the church for this new sound. It wasn't just a place to drink, it was a survival strategy for a generation that had nothing left to lose. They mixed the dark reality of Thatcher's Britain with the pure freedom of electronic dance music. Why do we dance when we are sad? Perhaps because grief does not always look like sitting alone in a dark room. Sometimes grief looks like blinding strobe light. Sometimes a broken heart sounds like a drum machine set to 130 beats per minute. When the world outside is falling apart, and the factories closed and the streets are burning, finding a way to feel joy is an act of rebellion. New Order did not just survive the tragic end of Joy Division. They took the crushing weight of the past and turned it into light. They taught a broken, dying city how to move again, and maybe that is the ultimate lesson of this era. When your world ends and everything goes dark, you don't have to die with it. You just have to find a new rhythm.